Welcome to Two Gents, where two seasoned gents take on the hard truths of life, success, and responsibility. In a world where the rules don't bend for us, these gents believe in doing the work, owning the struggle, and inspiring others to take action. So, pull up a chair.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to Two Gents Podcast. As I get out here this afternoon, I just want to let you know that today's going to be a different show. I want to start with this. This is my space that I want you to come in and sit in your space and listen to me kind of talk today. And I developed this so I could do this one thing because I think it's for black people. For black people, we need to learn how to sit in our own space. We need to understand what we're doing when we listen to people. They're out there talking to us. They need to be able to deliver you to a point in their space that makes sense, that's backed up with facts, that they can do or at least make you feel comfortable. A lot of those guys are a lot of those other YouTube podcasts are disappearing. Maybe it's because their content and how they approach their content is not important to it. I'm adjusting my camera, but with me, everything's important, especially when I'm talking about my people that look like me. My people that have endured and suffered so much that I don't think people take the time to talk to them. They want you to watch their channel, but they want you to watch their channel in hopes of getting paid or achieving an objective or going somewhere with it that's beneficial to them. And I don't have those admirations right now. Because I see something that's out there, and I seen it when I started doing the Houses on Fire, the burning houses, the Houses on Fire series. I seen something that people are not talking to each other, trying to improve. They're in another battle, another dynamic, and they're gonna continue to do that because they want your attention. They want your focus to be on them. But this is not about them today. So I'm going to get into my story. And I'm just going to go into it because you've seen the title, Spiritual Amnesia. I think that we have developed spiritual amnesia because we're at a point where we forget where we came from. We're at a point in life where what happened yesterday in our youth is not important today because they don't see where it goes. They don't understand that if they explain to other people that's about their age, that they can possibly do something positive in their life, possibly turn them to a point where they can turn around and they can kind of identify with. But if they don't have the concept from the beginning, we're lost. We're doomed. As a race of people, we're doomed. Because I want to say this. I'm doing the show and I'm looking at my screen because I needed to do this. Tomorrow night, the room gets real. We have Byron Glass and Pastor Riggins in there. We changed our format so we could talk about anything and everything what's going on right now. From politics to everyday life. And if it's something out there that you want us to touch bases on, you have an opportunity to do it right there. You can email us. We're inviting people into the show. I'm trying to get my position right on what you call it because I might have to adjust my camera for Instagram. Just turn it the opposite way. And I don't see it till a little bit later. So I need to see if that's just right. But yeah. The room gets real on Tuesday nights, and I'm asking you to follow us because I need Byron Glass. I need you to understand who Byron Glass is. I need you to understand who Pastor A.F. Riggins is. I need you to to get into it because we're not gonna limit ourselves on that show. We're not gonna do it. When my camera makes the adjustment on Instagram because we're behind, I'm gonna go ahead and go into the show. But even after then, on Wednesdays, I'm gonna get into why Black parents carry a different burden than every other parent, than any other parents that's out there. Why they carry a different burden. And I'm talking right directly to my people, the ones that I'm looking in this camera at right now. That's got my undivided attention, got me sitting in a space talking to you. So I want to make sure that I deliver what I say I'm gonna deliver. So this is where we at, family. I'm just gonna ask you to come. I'm just gonna ask you to pay a little bit more attention to what I'm saying, and realize that what I'm saying is not meant to hurt. It's meant to take us to a place to explain, to have you understanding from a different perspective, or from my perspective to you. And I try to Google this so I can make sure. I try to research my information so I can make sure I'm just putting out facts. So, family, I need to share something with you. I need to really share something with you that hit me so deep last week that when I put up this show, I'm prepared to go now. I'm prepared to go. And it hit me hard last week. Had me shaking my head, had me scratching my head, and the other part too, because I couldn't understand how far we had got away from just where we're at. So let's get into it. Let's do that. I was asking two brothers, two grown men in their 40s, good brothers, smart, intelligent. And we were sitting there having a conversation, and we didn't even start where we were going. But we had a conversation about, I want to say, a little bit about life, a little bit about football, a little bit about college football, and we just kept moving through that narrative to get where we was going. As we got to a point where they want to prove their point and I want to prove my point, we had two different age brackets in life. And I understand that. I mean, that's not hard to follow. We're at two different age brackets. I'm here and they're there. But we still should find common ground. And in that conversation, one of them finally said something that just stopped me in my tracks. And I let it go at that time because we were going somewhere else. But as I get from that situation and I start thinking about where I'm at right now, after I reflect on it, he said something. And I'm going to tell you what he said. Evidently, he was familiar with airplanes. He could have been a pilot. I don't know. Because he made emphasis on, I know how airplanes operate. I'm an expert at that. So he never identified I'm a pilot, but I can't say he ain't. So he said an airplane doesn't move in reverse. So why should I? And we were talking about history. We were talking about voting. We were throwing a lot of different things out there. And he said, as a matter of fact, I brought up the subject of Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, a couple other people. And this is what he said. He said, you know what? He said, airplane move forward. It don't go backwards. Now, I'm very familiar with them. At first, it sounded like something real clever that a young brother would make up. And I even tried to test him on. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Does it make a 360? He said, yeah. He said, yeah. He agreed with me on that. It can make a 360. A 360 still will make it go back to where it came from. And when it get back to where it came from, it can pivot and make another 360 and come back to where it's at. Might not be reversed, but it's the same process. Oh no, he didn't want to honor any of that. What he basically told me was, you're living in the past. You're living in the past, and that's the problem with most of you older guys. as they older guys, or as they like to call us, school. School. You're living in the past. You're not living in the current. You're not living where I'm living. You're not what made sense to you then is not making sense to me now. Need you to see that, because that's going to take you somewhere in just a minute. But the more I sat with myself, the more I realize it reveals something much bigger than politics. Because remembering is not just the same thing as living in the past. But they choose not to do either one of them. Nobody drives a car staring into their rearview mirror. They don't drive a car looking like this, looking at their rearview mirror without looking forward. The mirror isn't put in that place to even stop your progress. It's there to remind you where you've been and what you survived, what the dangers still exist. And suddenly I realized this wasn't really a conversation about voting. It wasn't a conversation about memory. It wasn't even a conversation about identity. It was a conversation about spiritual amnesia. And you say, why do I say spiritual amnesia? Because what they were saying, and that was a bigger picture of where the conversation was going. Because if you can't identify where you came from, if you can't gravitate to a point where you came from, how do you move to a future? Because what you're basically saying is that your future didn't come from nowhere. You got here to this point by not even having parents. When you couldn't do for yourself, when you couldn't wipe your own, when you couldn't put food on the table. But you got to this point, and now you don't want to look where you came from. And the people that got you here, they probably fell down on their knees praying that they could get you to the point where you at. And now you're at a point where you don't look back at what happened, because it takes from where you at right now. Well, I'm here to tell you, what you feeling comfortable with now, you might have to go back a little bit to understand that where you at right now doesn't necessarily mean where you can go to, doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the same status of paying your bills right now. Because it can become a time where you have to rely on other things, where you have to go back from which you came. Mm-hmm. Somebody need to let that sink in for a minute. A generation of people trying to move forward that they're willing to just miss the lessons that they learned in life. The very foundation that made them who they are. The people who died and came before them. The people who sacrificed within their own household to give them that nudge to move forward, to be more than where they came from. And that's what every parent tries to instill in their kids. To be more than what I did in life, to accomplish more. And then to make the next generation accountable for their actions too. Make them do more than what you was able to do. Make them take pride in where they came from. Let them know where they came from. Because when we stop getting to a point where we know where we came from, I don't know if we have a place to go after then. We don't have too many places to go. We need to have that foundation. And that foundation is where you came from, which leads you to go in the direction in which you're going in the future. And family, that's dangerous if all our youth are taking that approach to life. That's dangerous because, you know, the reason why they're able to snatch our kids into gangs and everything else before they get into life is because they don't see anything other than what's in their future. They don't realize the sacrifices that people made to get them there. Man, if we don't, I'm looking at something now. I don't see it. It's raining here, so I want to make sure that I'm still working. I'm still going somewhere. And family, that's the most dangerous position that we could ever be in as Black people. Not knowing where we came from, not knowing that the fight with us. Let me pause for a minute because I need to explain here in a way where Black people understand. A lot of us, majority of us, came from Africa. That's a clean, documented history. You know why? Because they treated people coming from Africa as commodities. That's why it's so clean. They had to give you a place from where you came from to let you know that you really don't have a home, is what they basically telling you. They're telling you that your home is over in Africa. I don't want to get too far into that, but I will tell you this. Next Monday, I'm really going to expose some stuff that happened right here. The same families that they say are America's wealth, DuPont, JP Morgan, all the rest of them names that you can come up that had money, had an ambitious plan to destroy a part of our history. And that in itself tells you the reason why we're the people that we are, because people work to destroy people that had a history. And if they could destroy that narrative, that means that there was somebody. So you're going to walk over that you just came into a place. Anyway, I'm getting stuck. Can't get stuck because I'm going to lose my narrative. But I'm upset about it. So next Monday, please tune in at the same time, 1 p.m. I'm going to talk to my people, because I need you to understand some things that's been stacked against you, how far this deck will stack against you. Anyway, because when you disconnected from your past, you often, listen to what I'm about to say, you're often disconnected from God. That's the reason why this show is about spiritual amnesia, because God is part of your past. God probably got you to where you at right now. But if you disconnect from your history and how you got here, that's a disconnect from God going forward. Spiritual amnesia. Some people that might not make sense. But same principle. If you don't put kids in the seats of your churches and let them understand what God is about and what church is about and the discipline that it brings, they ain't gonna see no future. Because God is gonna become spiritual amnesia. You know, if you erase the struggle, you erase the faith that carried the struggle. Somebody gonna get that. Somebody gonna understand that. You erase the faith that carried the struggle. Your faith in God carried the struggle, and you knew what your battles were because somebody had did it before you. So when you got there, you were armored up in the spirit. You were armored up in your attitude, you were armored up, prepared. But if somebody just went out of their way and called you that N word on that job, you was armored up to know that you taking care of your family. That next paycheck gonna come. If you just get armored up with a history of what people will do, and some people will just try you to get you out of where you at. Some people will just try you to make sure that you're weak enough that you're gonna do something stupid. But if you got a history and a sense of pride of where you came from, and you recognize that people made sacrifices for you to get there, those words don't mean nothing. You bounce off of that and you move on to something else, because until you have something prepared in place to replace where you at, you might have to do some things a little different. You might have to take that pride from what they happened to those people in Selma when they walked across that bridge, and know that they continue to go on. We know that John Lewis continued to march on, continued to press forward, even though all of that stuff happened to him back in Selma. Because when you disconnect from God, you might not be able to take the suffering that John Lewis took. You may not even be able to take the suffering of not being able to sit at a counter. You may not be able to take the suffering of walking on the other side of the street because they don't want you on that side of the street. And they got signs out there. They don't want you to go to the same bathrooms as them. Just wash your hands or do whatever you're doing. You take for granted today that we got here, and that's here to stay. People have hung from trees. People have been bombed. Young girls that never got a chance in life, bombed in a church of God. Let that sink in for a minute. And here we're talking about our mentality. We don't go back. We just move forward. Our youngsters have that attitude. Let me tell you, I just gotta share this with you. Because you are where you're at right now, and you're comfortable, and you feel good about yourself, don't mean that you can't go back. Don't matter what kind of position that you're in. But if you don't have a history of being strong that you embedded in your mind, when they tell you to go back, you're going to continue to look forward, and it's not going to be the same. You ain't going to adjust because you continue to look forward. And not know that people lost their jobs for less. Not know that people had less than what you did, and they survived on it because you're looking forward. And when they take your forward progress away from you as Black people, you're lost. No, it's supposed to be like this, man. That's the way it's going. I'm in a job, I'm secure. I just did series on AI replacement. And just think, if that brother was a pilot of an airplane, what do you think's next? See, an airplane don't have to go backwards, but he said it goes forward. What if they somehow did away with a whole technology where the airplane flew itself from point A to point B? What if they took those tower workers, because it's repetitive work and it's symbols on a screen? Yeah, they have to make split section decisions. But if you remember doing my AI instructions, they model and they go better. They get better from mistakes. So that same pilot eventually will get in that cockpit and sit there and monitor to make sure that the AI is doing its job. Oh yeah, and you sitting back Cadillacing. You're saying, hey, that's good. But what if they didn't need a person there? They're doing the same thing with trucks. They just got to cars. I'm just showing you progress. But we don't know nothing about the history, so we're not prepared to go backward and build ourselves back up because we don't know what nothing looked like. We forgot what it felt like. So when we get back there, we don't know where to start from. I'm moving on. I can't keep that to myself. That kind of knowledge I need to share. We need to talk about it. When moving forward becomes a shield from the past, we need to talk about it. And that's what this is about. The more I thought about these brothers, the more I realized something. A lot of people today use moving forward as a shield from their past because they fear if they have to look at their past, they're not going forward. But if you don't look at your past, you don't know where you're going in the future. Every once in a while, you got to look at that rearview mirror, and maybe when you come into a stop, you might see a car about to hit you from the rear. And then you could just move forward just enough to give them just a little bit of room, just to hit their brakes and maybe not hit you from behind. Not have you suffer all the costs, because if you're in an incident, I don't care how innocent you are, the insurance company is going to raise your rate because you was in an incident. I'm just saying everything has a repercussion to it, and that's just one of them in that situation. A shield, when you put that shield in place and you're not looking backward, you're going to have problems. Problems that you can't see, problems that you can't even identify before you even get there, because you don't have a past track record of them being there. You don't have a past, you can't use your faith from the past because you're not using it in the future. See, when that person tears you down in that future, you can fall down and get on your knees and pray about it to somebody. But if you ain't got nothing there to draw from, you are there by yourself. I don't mean to get preachy, but when I jumped out of airplanes and I didn't feel comfortable, almost every single time that I jumped, before I even stood up and hook up or anything like that, I said me a prayer, because the outcome of me jumping out of that plane may not be the same. But I want to have my faith. When I jumped out of that plane, I want to have my faith with me. And I know that I hooked that static line up, and I know that the parachute's going to deploy on my way down, because I put my faith in the past where I had been taught about God and Jesus. Going forward, it's like you putting your faith in man. And that's kind of dangerous. So if you're below 40 and that's your path to your progression, I hope that as we have kids at my age, because I tell my kids all the time, you need to learn how to pray, because that's going to get you somewhere. Not in difficult times only, but even in good times, it's going to make it better. Because you know how to pray in good times, it'll make up for the bad times. We got to do better as a people, because that's where we came from. I don't want you to feel responsible for what others sacrifice. I don't want you to carry the weight of the history. I don't want you to deal with anything that asks something of me. Wow. But here's the problem. None of us got here by ourselves. Take that into account. You didn't just show up, as you say, the airplane moving forward. You didn't show up on that day. Even if you was pilot, you didn't just show up and get in that cockpit from that time forward and not know that you had to take tests, you had to go to college if some, you had to do everything that you could punch a ticket on to get there. So if you get to a point where you're not respecting what it took to get there, at some point somebody's gonna take you out of your feel good moment and put you back to where you came from, and you ain't gonna be able to adjust. That's the reason why this is called just real talk for Black people. And other people have the same problems, but if they want to sit here and come into this platform, the same stuff that's applying to Black people can apply to some of them, except that they have some extended some extended privilege that we don't have. But the same stuff that I'm talking about Black people about today, it could pass over to somebody else. So when I say just talking to Black people, this naming this just real talk to Black people, I'm there first. And I got here a long time. I got here not too long ago because we're making sacrifices that our ancestors. It's almost like we're not paying attention to what they did. We're not paying attention to the lesson that they taught us. When we do that, we're not paying attention to God, because God got them to that. And he will help carry you over and help extend where you want to go. But if you forget about your history and you're on that airplane moving forward, let me tell you, that's going to all come to an end. You know, here's sacrifices that people made to get, just to put you in perspective. Somebody had to show up to that play that you was in. Somebody had to go to that school for PTAs meetings and all the rest of that. Somebody had to volunteer to do programs that they didn't really want to do. They could have been at home sitting on their butt. Somebody had to answer the call when the teacher called and said that you wasn't acting right in school, and came up and tried to resolve it before they put you out of school. Somebody sat somewhere, either on the kitchen table or on the floor, however you did it. Somebody sit there and spend some time with you to get you to where you at. But if you're not willing to remember that, how can you see a future? Somebody worked overtime for you at them jobs because they said, man, I could go home right now, but I need to get my daughter or my son an extra pair of tennis shoes. I need to get them some extra clothes so they can go forward. I need to get them some extra work. I want to put them in a tutoring program. I want to do those things to help them so they can get better in life. But if you don't remember your past, you don't remember a lot of stuff. You just lost. Eventually you go forward so much that you lost. That you eventually find yourself digressing back, trying to recover some of what you thought that you had. And now just think, if you act like none of that matters, forward movement is like drifting. I hate to tell you, forward movement is like drifting, because as you move forward, you drifting wherever you go. It's not with the decisions that you make is on forward movement, not based on your past, where you came from, because if it was based on your past, you'd be able to make a better decision as you out there drifting. And you know what else? Forgetting. Forgetting is a part of forgetting. It's a part of, like you saying, I want to forget my history and move forward. Well, when you do that, it's too many other things that you forget. At one time, the church was what made us who we are. I'm looking at the camera when I say this. made every single person in your history who they are, who they were. Doesn't matter about the religion. The church gave you, was grounded, gave you that foundation. Didn't matter about the sticks, the wiring, the plumbing, or none of that, because you could have a foundation, put some sticks on it, and build an outhouse, burn some candles, and go down to the stream or spring or whatever, and get some water and bring it into that building and still be functional. They want acceptance. This is a big one. They want acceptance without accountability. And that's a dangerous path, because everything that you did in your past wasn't perfect. But you don't want nobody to remember anything that you did in your past. You want them to see you as you are today and go forward. It's dangerous. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. What you're basically saying is, I stole from you in the past. I want you to forget it moving forward in our relationship. I want you to be just as loose as you was in the past, because here I am right now. So even if you repeated your past, you wouldn't even reflect from where you came from to know not to take it again. Because you're on the airplane moving forward. On the airplane moving forward. What they basically saying is, they don't want you to remember who hurt you. They don't want you to remember who they disappointed. They don't want you to remember that they borrowed from you. That's a big one. They don't want you to remember that they borrowed money from you and never paid it back, because they're moving forward. They don't care about you having to make that sacrifice back there. Maybe one of your bills wasn't paid. Maybe something that you saw them as a potential. You saw them as having a hard time, but you gave up yours to help them. And they're at a point in their life where they're not looking back. See? That's the reason why I talk to Black people, because we need to remember those things as we move forward. And if we remember those things as we move forward, we get better as a people. You can't get better if you can't acknowledge where you came from. It really boils down to what they basically said and what they did in their actions of what they were doing. What they were telling me is that I was born 5 minutes ago. I don't care what happened in the 6th minute. But 5 minutes ago, I was born, and we sitting here and we having this conversation. Let's take this conversation forward, even though it was based on the past. Just saying. They don't want no roots. They don't want responsibility. They don't want no record of their actions. But remembering requires all of those things to be in place so you have a balance to move forward in. Oof. I'm talking to my people, Black people. Just real talk for Black people. Just sit in your space and digest a little bit of what I'm saying, and you'll see why I'm here. And the reason why I chose this path, I could be talking about politics, I could be talking about anything else, but if it's not advancing my people because I think that we're lost, why am I doing it? It ain't my job. But I feel enough about knowing where the past of what other people besides myself, what other people besides my parents sacrificed, what other people besides their parents sacrificed just to get where they are in life. And each generation, it was suffered a little less. But we're going to suffer more if we don't know our past. If you remember sacrifice, it becomes gratitude that we're not where we used to be. If you remember the struggle, responsibility of what you got and what you acquired, and knowing that you could lose it becomes necessary. If you remember the price, you can't pretend somebody else should pay the bill. Let me say it again. If you remember the price that was paid, you can't pretend that somebody else should pay the bill. That's why forgetting feels easier than facing life. Forgetting demands nothing. Remembering asks something of you. And see, that's the reason why I got to tie this back to my everything that I get on this, because I started with politics on Two Gents podcast. But I began to realize over time that I needed to reach out to my people a little bit more, because if they don't understand strategy over cost, and you know I do this every time. So you can take a strategy to get ahead, but you don't step over nobody to get to your strategy to go ahead, because it's a possibility that that strategy that you chose to step over somebody else that look like you to help somebody else go forward. What if they don't move forward? You just stepped over the person that looked like you. When do you begin to reflect? To know that policies and procedures from other people may not reflect what you want in policies from your side. I'm trying to keep from calling that name. I'm doing everything that I possibly can not to call that name, because I don't want everything to go there, but it does reflect of what I'm talking about today. Voting is a symptom of something that we got to put it's a symptom of moving forward. It's a symptom of knowing that people sacrifice. It's a symptom of something that has to be there. It can't just be about memory. You have to tie that memory into something that's taking you forward. True enough, but you don't start just going forward without a memory. One brother, even after this conversation, we talked about how drugs got into the Black community. And here's the thing. This is my argument. Maybe their argument is different than mine. But you want to blame the. I understand the strategy behind it. You want to say that it wouldn't have been there, it wouldn't have been available if the government or the president wouldn't have got involved and tried to play like it wasn't part of his plan to destroy the Black community. But here's the difference. Here's where I got to hold Black people accountable, because that president didn't step into any community that was there. Somebody that looked like us took that initiative to destroy their own community. Am I not holding the government accountable? I am. But who should I hold a higher standard to? And see, young people, when they on that airplane and they only see Ford, they jump back and they blame everybody else for the progress. And and I want to break it down so you can understand how deep this went. Because what he said was, and this goes back to the research, he said Big Meech and them got their drugs from the government. Big Meech and them was government supplied their drugs to destroy the community. That's not true. Because during that time that the drugs were pumped into the community by the government, go see who was the president at that time. And that's why I say you have to get smarter. You have to get smarter because at the time the president was not Ronald Reagan. When Big Mitch and them were out there, it wasn't Ronald Reagan. You know who was destroying the community at that time? Freeway Rick Ross. From the West Coast to the East Coast. That's where the drugs were coming into our community. That's where they originally started. That's where they didn't end. What I'm saying is it wasn't supplied by the government no more. So when Big Meech and them came in there, they wasn't getting their drugs from the government. So you can't use that excuse as a young brother saying, oh yeah, they drugs can't. Look at the history. They probably were little mini boys. Look at the ages. So you're making an argument that you don't do any research about. I got to move on. But at some point, we also got to face ourselves. We have to face the choices that we made, the damage we did to ourselves, the opportunities that we ignored, the people we hurt, because the accountability begins where excuses end. And that's what spiritual amnesia looks like. Not accepting responsibility, not understanding that God is where our ancestors got their energy, their fire, and continue to go. That's where they got their persistence from, because they had a foundation to build from. When you take away the foundation to build from, everything else is gonna collapse. It looks like blaming everyone else while refusing to examine ourselves. Because if we take the accountability for where we are at, if we take the accountability that blacks sold to blacks in the community, and they didn't care as long as they got elevated, and to use the excuse, you didn't come from where I came from, you didn't have to make the decision that those people did. If you think about Big Meech and his brother, I think the older brother had a job. He was making it. I think the mother and father that was in that family had a job. It might not have been what they thought it should have been, but they were making it. So it is a decision on whether or not you want what you want in life. And it is a decision based on how much damage, if you look at it past being Rick Ross, what he did to our people, maybe you'll make a better decision when you became Big Meech. Said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go out here and work a regular job. But we elevate them because that's an airplane going forward. Not worried about looking at the past. I'm done with that. It looks like remembering what was done to us while forgetting what we've done to each other. And that's dangerous. That's a spiritual amnesia. The deeper danger isn't political, it's spiritual. That's what got us spiritual. being able to pray, being able to go back to a point and realize that in order to move forward, we have to be based in something that gives us foundation. Or else we no different than those that brother that told me he's not worried about the past. The past will come back and haunt you. See, when you don't remember who delivered the people to where they at right now, you don't remember what got them here, you don't remember who carried you, you don't even remember what survival looked like. You don't even remember if I did something for you as a person. When you stop remembering who done something for you as a person, what if your parents couldn't make that next note and they went to the grandparent? What if your mother was getting evicted out of the house, or your father or your family, and they was able to go to another family member and get that extra help to help them help you continue? And they probably didn't do it for the parents. They did it for the child. So he wouldn't have to find out what that's about. Those are some deep words right there. Because they knew the record of the parents wasn't that good, but they turned out and sacrificed for that child that has never lived life, never got an opportunity to keep him from seeing what could happen. People, because as a people who forget, eventually lose their identity. And why is that so real? Because people, Black people as a whole, they want to destroy our identity. They want to piecemeal our history and show us the story that they want us to see without looking back and questioning. Wait a minute, that's kind of too clean. That history that you're showing me is kind of too clean because it points. Let me tell you. Think about this. Just a thought. I'm sitting up for this. Think about this. If I could point back to where you came from, say Africa, what I'm basically saying to you is this. We were smarter than you. Your own people sold you to us for a price. What does that do for their line? It makes them look like they were genius because they went into a Black nation and they stole people from within that nation, and they were smart enough to sell across this ocean and sell you at auctions. So they still look like they in control. So if they sell you that clean history throughout time, why we're still under master's control today? And we wonder why we need to learn our history, because if you understand your history, you have a reason to move forward. You have a purpose in life. But if you don't understand your history, they can tell you whatever they want to tell you. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. Anyway, because people who forget eventually, I'm going to go back to this word, lose their identity. If you forget your story, you eventually forget your purpose. If you forget your purpose, you eventually forget your responsibility. You forget your responsibility. Who got you here? And you will say to somebody like Trump that's erasing history that it don't matter. This ain't the first time in history where they tried to destroy who we were as a people. They tried to destroy what we had achieved. They basically whitewashed a period of history that if you don't know where to look for and you don't know where to get it from, you can't find it. As Black people, we need to be better prepared for that. As Black people, we need to understand that they already tried to erase our ancestors. They're erasing them now, and they erased them then. And then we question how come we're here. What's the name of this show? Just real talk for Black people. We need to learn how to sit in our space and educate ourselves so they don't send us down that same hole that they went down and then appoint themselves as masters over us based on a story that they tell. Yeah, they can come up with those documents and show you how many people came out of Africa. But the reason why they're doing that is because they want you to follow that narrative, saying that they're better than you. And that hurts. I gotta go. Whew. If they can convince you that memory or history doesn't matter, that means that you didn't exist. Because remember, the airplane can't go, but it only moves forward. You ain't gonna go back and recover none of your history or none of your ancestors and try to understand the struggle that they went through. I'm gonna say this where you can halfway understand what I'm saying. How many different names have they called us over the years? You know why? And I need you to, I'm gonna go into this next week, but I need you to understand the reason why that one drop of blood clarified who you was. I'm gonna call his name. Walter Plecker. Remember that name, Walter Plecker. Because he did something in history. He was part of that one drop of blood. Because if I can get that one drop of blood, I can name you then. I can classify you. It doesn't give you any, it doesn't open up ideas for you to be anything but what I call you. And if I can classify you as that, you don't have any other history. You follow my narrative. One drop of blood. No test. And you know they didn't have, they couldn't tell at one time. Some people, some Black people could pass for white. But if they had one drop of blood, there was a Black descendant, they put you in that category. And they renamed you, they reclassified you. They start erasing records about you. Got to get there. It's about saving that memory. It's about protecting your identity. It's about preserving the foundation that carried us this far. If we forget where we came from, we will repeat. We will barely survive because we don't know what it takes to go forward. If we forget the struggle, we undervalue the freedom that we have right now. We undervalue it. And if we undervalue that, we're going backward. If we forget the sacrifice, we neglect the responsibility that came with it, that people paid for with their lives in some kind. Let me just say that people died for opportunities many of us now take for granted. I'm not going to call their name because you don't want to hear that. You want to be on the airplane that's moving forward. You don't want to hear that as the airplane gets to the end of the runway and it doesn't take off, there's some dangers After then, people marched, people bled, all while people prayed. I want to say this, and I want to make sure that you get it. People endured humiliation, violence, and rejection so future generations could stand taller than they did. And yet, some of us talk as though history is irrelevant. Some, not all, some. Also, the struggle is no longer, act like the struggle is no longer matters, but then you look at the current situation of what Trump is taking us to as a nation and what he's doing to your history, and you can't see it. You can't see that he's pulling. He don't even want to recognize that Obama was president of the United States. You get it. I just hope that it's not too late. It's not. It's not. It's not. Remember who we are. Remember. That's what I'm asking. Remember who we are. Before we leave today, I want you to think about something. Who prayed for you before you could pray for yourself? Who sacrificed so you could stand where you stand today, even if it's not standing, but sitting in the seat of the airplane, knowing that the airplane doesn't go in reverse? Somebody had to get there before you got there. Who worked the long hours so you could have the opportunities they never had? I want to share something with you. Personal to me. This morning, before I went on the air, I don't even know if you want me to tell you his business. But one of my sons was on a totally different continent than where I am, where we are today. And it was a continent that his father hadn't been to. There's very few places in Europe that you can tell me that the military didn't take me into in Europe. But he was on a total another continent that nobody generational in my lineage has ever been. Let that sink in. But if he didn't know his past, he wouldn't be where he is today, because he has taken it to another level. And I told him, I said, you know what? I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Because I know the history. I know how he got there. I know the sacrifices that he made to get where he's at today. All my kids have made sacrifices to get where they are today. All of them. But see, within my kids, if one of them is another place, none of them are angry at each other because of where they at. They celebrate it. And you can't celebrate if you don't know where you came from. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you came from a generation of people that went to jail all the time, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's your future. But if you don't remember how they got to the place where they were, you're doomed to repeat it. Just can't put it in drive and go forward without looking behind you at some point. You just can't do it. Even to change lanes and get out of where you was, you're gonna have to look in that rear view mirror, look in that side view mirror, looking backwards to make sure it's nothing there that's gonna block you from going over into a different lane to go around where your parents left you. I'm going. Black people, I'm looking at my time. We need to wake up. We need to wake up. We need to make sure that our kids understand that if they don't know where they came from, they don't know where they're going. And that's, if they don't understand what God has done for us to get us here, they're going to reach a point in the future that they can't adjust to. And the way this economy going, the way AI is replacing people, the way everything is leaning toward making a better life for a machine or a brain, eventually a robot going to be able to pick up paper on the street. Eventually a robot going to be able to do electrical jobs based on the AI that's in them. It's not now, but you have to see it coming in the future because they're building robots that have hands, fingers, and everything else like we're doing. I just, who carried you when you didn't even know that you were being carried? And beyond all that, what has God brought you through? Because if we forget what God has done, we eventually forget who we are. And if we forget who we are, we become easily divided, easily to manipulate, easily defeated. Family, it's time to remember. Remember the marchers. Woo. Remember the mothers who prayed for us. Remember the fathers who worked themselves into the ground when they wouldn't let mothers get the same job. And even today, as you listen to people, so I can relate it to you, Taji P. Henson and other Black actresses out there that say that they're not getting paid what their counterpart is getting paid for doing the same thing. Some of these actors have Grammys. It doesn't change if you don't remember your past. I gotta leave it where you can understand it. Remember elders in the church. Remember your grandparents and everybody that you sit down and listen and try to give you a foundation to grow from, to elevate to where you're at today. They was telling you those stories so you could elevate yourself past them. And they was telling you the stories that was self-inflicted upon them by other people. So you could elevate past there. Then you're going to get there and you don't want to reflect back on what you were told. We got to remember the sacrifices. Remember the faith that got us here. Remember the God who brought us through storms we never should have survived. And I go back to that story about me getting up to jump on that airplane. Yeah, it paid me a different pay. It gave me a little bit more extra in my paycheck when I got up to that door every single time. But I wouldn't have been able to walk out that door unless I said a prayer before I hit that ramp to get out of that airplane, praying that my chute opened, that I landed on the ground safely. And I'm sitting here today because God, my prayers were answered. I'm sitting here today because He brought me from there. No, I'm not jumping out of airplanes today, but I did. I suffered from jumping out of airplanes like I did because my knees are bad now, my back is bad now. But that impact on my life, I remember to this day. I didn't see it all. See, God has a way of looking down the road and taking care of you. God has a way of looking down the road. I want to share something with you so you can understand. See, sometimes you help people and you put them in a position where they accomplish things. And you know what you do? You don't look back on them. Don't throw it up in their face. You don't do any of that. Doesn't matter what they do, because whatever they did or whatever they do, that's on them. That's on them. And if you're not big enough to move past that, when I say move past it, don't hold them accountable for what you did for them. Because God then brought them from a mighty long way. And I don't want to get in another direction before I get out of here. I'm getting ready to close out. If you can remember your past and where you came from, you can remember the people that helped you get there. And if you can remember that you prayed to God to get everything that you got, negativity in your life doesn't stand a chance. People bumping up against you, people calling you out of your name, people taking actions against you. If you know where you came from spiritually, and you know what grounded you in where you at, and you know that you can fall down on your knees at any time and pray and believe it and have faith, man, oh man, that's a power that I can't even begin to explain. It so many times in my life when I thought I was down and there wasn't no path up, God delivered me to a place where I didn't even expect. I was exalted beyond where my limited thought was. And sometimes in life, that's what we do. We put ourselves in a position, God's telling us to go one way, and we end up going another way, and then we end up coming back to God, and God ends up correcting that path more than what we were prepared for. We was prepared to accept least when he gave us more. But if we forget that in our past, if we don't accept that history that got us here, if we don't use these words, I've tried them for myself. I know his outcome is greater than mine. Based on my history of asking. As Black people, we need to find our roots again. We need to find our foundation so we can move forward. And once we found that foundation and we respect one another within that foundation, we can move forward as a people. Only thing I can end with this on is this has been real history, trying to teach you something, trying to share something with you. This has been real answers, trying to give you some answers of how we move forward as a people. This is real power when we discover exactly what our potential is. With that being said, I want to do this. I want to say thank God for this show. Thank God for everything that he's done in my life. Thank God for everything that he's going to put in my future. That's what I want to do. But I want to remind you of something that's happening here. See, I came from a place of Two Gents podcast, and we put that thing together and we ran with it as long as we possibly can. And just last week, we changed it up. Just last week. Each one of us brings different stuff to the table. So tomorrow night at Tuesday at 7:30, I want you to tune in as Pastor A.F. Riggins, Byron Glass, and myself discuss issues that we have on the table that we want to bring you into the conversation where you can participate and you can direct our narrative. If that's not good enough, I'm going to start posting the email that you can tell us about what you want to talk to. Hopefully we have a special guest that comes in tomorrow that you will enjoy where she's coming from too and the things that she has accomplished. So I just want to say, that's the invite. If something come up, I don't never want people to be obligated to anything. because something may come up. And you know the reason why I got here? Based on history. I'm just telling you, history plays a big role. So join us tomorrow night as it gets real in the room. As it gets real in the room. And that's what we're going to do. Tomorrow night, join us at 7:30. It's called Two Gents Podcast, but it gets real in that room. And then on Wednesday, I need you to stay focused. I'm going to show you the reason why Black people need to learn to sit in their space and reflect and understand the future as well as the past. Because it's history out there. It's big gaps in history that's been deleted intentional. That unless somebody brought it to you, unless somebody broke it down, because you can Google it on GPT and everywhere else, and they'll tell you, oh no, that it ain't no possibility that could be true based on the facts that's in there. But let me tell you something. If we don't get involved in it, that narrative is going to eventually write us out of it. History. Because if you can, let me tell you how dynamic this is. If I, just a little old Ron, can go out there and ask a question from where I started, and one of them just basically said that it wasn't a possibility that could be true, but it was enough information out there that called out enough documentation and different acts that was put in place by the government that even that entity had to come back and say, you know what? Let me do a little bit more research. One of the entities had to go back and think because I use a couple of them. One of them had to go back and think and dig so deep that it never came back. I had to close it out and come back into it. And then it acknowledged what I just tried to figure out. You'll know what it is on Wednesday. I don't want to give too much away. I'm telling you, it's a possibility that there's different narratives of where we came from. But if we don't look at our past and how people try to whitewash it, a portion of it, we're doomed to repeat it. And I already say my thank God for being here. So before I get into something else that I don't want to get into, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. And then later on that night, join Pastor A.F. Riggins as he has Bible study. It'll be posted on the pages. We got about 4 pages that we're running right now on Facebook. Running my personal page. We're running Blog Talk USA. We're running Two Gents Podcast. And we're running Just Real Talk for Black People on Facebook. I'm not going any further. I'm staying within that dynamics. And I'm using Instagram until I can get 2 Instagram pages posting at the same time. I'm going to have to use this information and where we at right now. So it's been real. It's been great. I hope I left you with something, because every time before I get on this air, I pray. I say, God, let me leave them with something. Let me educate them if that's your purpose. Let me offer a future to them that's different than where they're at. And that's my purpose in doing this. Take care. My name is Ron. I'll see you tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.